What's up, party people? This is Tarkus Jude Mossberg here from Facebook, Jude's Junk, Facebook comic book shop page, YouTube channel, website. So someone just asked a great question. It has to do with submitting your books through a dealer, and then they submit to CGC, and now it's been a couple weeks and they don't know what to do. So in one of the videos I have, I talk about why I recommend not submitting a book through your LCS or dealer, because you'll get the credit if you create your account, and $150 for the cost of the membership is fine. Maybe the process is easier because your dealer presses it, charges you a fee for pressing, and then he ships it in, and maybe he gets that 20% discount. I don't know if he passes that 20% discount on to you or not, but if he's got a premium account, I think it's called, he gets 20% off. So he checked to see if he's charging you only the 10% off, or if he's giving you the full 20% off, or maybe he's charging you a fee separate. So there's different ways he could maybe be profitable from doing that work for you. Sometimes people do it for you just in hopes that you buy more books from them and then submit. So some people will do it for free. Some people might take that 10% extra discount and pocket it as a profit. Some people might take the 20% extra and pocket it as a profit. And typically then they're shipping it back to them, and then you come to the store and pick it up. Now, if they got to turn around and ship it to you, then it's double shipping, and that can really make things expensive. But he was asking a very specific question I didn't really address in my last video, even though I talked about the benefits of, creating your own account for visibility so you can track it. If these dealers, let's just say they're making the 10% off you. Okay. Even if it's a $300 order, you're not getting 10% of the admin fees. You're not getting 10% of the labels. You're not getting 10% of shipping. You're getting 10% of the cost of the book. Is the 20% discount on Signature Series? Let's just assume it's just grading. I don't think you get that on the Signature Series. Let's assume it's just a blue label grading. Let's say they get that 20%. 300 minus the shipping and the labels, let's say it's 250. So they're making 25 bucks. Okay. If it takes them an hour to do everything, it's not worth it for them. So it's a loss leader. They're doing it as a friendly benefit for you in hopes that you might buy some more books from them. And that's fair. The problem is they don't want to deal with your calls in 3 weeks. Where's it at? CGC doesn't want to deal with the comic book store calling them in 3 weeks. Where's it at? Nobody wants to deal with that question. Everybody that's done it knows it. You have zero visibility. Shut up, sit down, and be quiet until it comes is basically CGC's response. And it's going to be that response to the dealer. Now the dealer has to call in, wait on hold, just so he can tell you, yeah, I called him, or else he's just going to be rude and say, keep your mouth shut. We'll tell you when it's in. And a lot of dealers might have to do that because they know that there's no benefit to calling in. Except, okay. So this is actually answering a question: when should you reach out to CGC after you've submitted the books? And again, I do a lot of Signature Series, so I get it confused. So let's just look at blue labels. A lot of issues with me is with Signature Series, I always get pressing, so that takes longer after the guy signs it. Sometimes the guy signs it's in a different country, so they got to mail the books to him. It just took me over a year to get my Tom King books, and he didn't even sign one of them. He just did the inscription, so they gave it to me for free. But if you're just looking to grade a book and you're wondering, when should I call? 9 months to a year. Except if it's magazine, except if you add pressing, except if it's over $400. We're talking about under $400, after 1974, non-magazine, no pressing, wait 9 months. If it's any of those others, maybe a year. Again, it depends whether you're doing the order or the dealer's doing the order. You don't want to piss off the dealer. They're not going to want to do it for you anymore. They got a lot of orders in. They don't want to call up every day, and you don't force them into a position where they're lying. At some point, it does make sense to call in because there's an error. It got stuck somewhere. It got lost. And that's the problem. You have zero visibility if you're going through a dealer. And unless they're chasing down your books, Don't do it. Submit it yourself. So you can call them, you can see the numbers, you can call them whenever you want. You can call them every 3 days if you want. That's on your prerogative. But if you're using a dealer, don't bother them after 9 months, or if it's one of those other situations, maybe a year. You call in, the person says, now there's different ways you can do this. I had a presser that actually had the books shipped directly to me from CGC. He did the order, but he used my credit card to pay for the order, and he had it shipped to me. So if the books are being shipped to you, then you can call in and chase down the status. If they're not being shipped to you, if they're ordered from the dealer and have to be shipped to the dealer, then you can't call in and get a status. So either have the books shipped directly to you, which they can't do if they're doing a bulk shipment, or just do your own order. Again, just do your own order. It's worth it in times and headaches. There will be mistakes. And if there's a mistake in the label, then they got to send a return. And if you can manage all that, way easier than your dealership does. Because sometimes you do need to call in and you need to chase things down. Every time I want to send a book back, I give a call, make sure they document it, or I send an email, make sure they document it. Hey, I'm sending this book back. All right, go ahead, do a return. Because a label was mistaken or there was an error or a crack or whatnot, and they usually fix it quickly. But why 9 months? There's a lot of issues that can happen. Like I said, there's been books that have been on hold for 2 years. Now, that was through a dealer, through my presser. And I bothered him after a year, and he reached out, and they said they're looking. 6 months later, I reached out. They're still looking. They're looking for him. They don't know what the issue is. So in that case, it would have been better if it was in my name so I could really bother him and say, okay, I want to submit an insurance claim now. I don't want to wait any longer. So the last time they lost some books of mine, it was Peach Momoko, some cheap books, relatively cheap. And then you're going to say I insured it for $400, but a 9/8 sells for $100. So now you have to negotiate with them. Depending on your negotiating power, they might give you the amount that you're insured it for, which we typically insure everything for $400 because that's the max. Or they might insist that they're only going to give you what it's worth graded. They might only give you what it's worth raw, give you your money back for the grading and say that book's a $20 book raw. And then you got to argue with them. Well, it's not just a $20 book. I cracked 3 9/8, so that's what I'm insuring is the 9/8 I sent in. And then you might need to prove that you cracked the 9/8 by like some kind of video or something of you cracking the 9/8. And if your presser's doing that, then maybe he has a video. But that's what I did. I cracked 9/8, and I had to prove to them that I sent in 3 9/8. And so they gave me the value of 3 9/8 instead of the value of 3 raw books. So a lot of that is under discussion. And again, we're assuming they lost it. Why 9 months? Just because that's what it takes. Sometimes, there's little errors, shipping. It's not like it's going to be late for a signature series event. That's different. You have to get in there by a certain deadline. They have to enter it. When you ship it to them and it's just grading, it might sit in the corner. It might have gotten lost. They might have found it and processed it. They're not going to tell you why things are delayed because it just gives them more liability. So, it's in processing, they'll say, or you'll see on the computer screen if it's your order, it's waiting for the next phase or step. I would say 9 months is time to start getting worried. Now, you could ask your dealer if he'll reach out prior to that, maybe 6 months. Even though when you send it in, there's a time on CGC website that says, okay, average turnaround time for a graded book, let's say it's 45 days. Assume a 5-day work week. So that's 45 business days. So what is that? That's 9 weeks. That's not a month and a half. That's 45 days divided by 9. That is 9 weeks, which is over 2 months. That was the estimate when you sent it in. 6 months later, they got a special. They got hit with a bunch of books. Now it's a 90-day wait. So it's no longer a 2-month wait, but you're like, hey, wait, you said it was 90 days back then. Well, that was back then, just to help you out. That wasn't guarantee the turnaround time for your future books. So when that goes from 45 to 90 days, again, divided by 5, you're looking at 18 weeks. Let's say 4 weeks in a month, you're looking at almost 5 months. So that doesn't even include errors, maybe in shipping that got put aside and didn't get discovered for a couple weeks. Maybe some graders got really sick. Maybe they fired a bunch of graders for fraud and didn't tell you about it. Now they have to train new graders before they can grade the cheapies, the moderns, because the over 400, over 1,000, they're graded by a different department that provide different grading criteria. So if it's over 400, if it's magazine size, those take longer. The graders in that department are fewer per book, so the turnaround time is usually longer. That's why you see on their website the turnaround time for those is usually longer. Now there's some expedited fees you can pay to bump that up. But remember, if people can pay to get it expedited, then that means people can jump you in line. And that's what's going to happen. So if a bunch of people, send in 200 books to get expedited, those are jumping you in line. So if you are waiting for a deadline, like a movie to come out to sell it, if you are seeing the books go down in value and you're trying to sell it before they go down in value, like all those absolute Batmans that are still in their queue that people just submitted in the last 4 weeks, you're out of luck. That is the game. That is the speculation game. I got burned in 2001 when I sent in 200 books, and it ended up being a 2-year wait. Guess what happened 2 years later? Everything had tanked. I got all the books back, a lot of them back. I did lose about 30. I got all the books back, hundreds. And frankly, when they take that long, there's an issue with paper memory. So if you pressed it before you sent it in there, if they're not grading it for 2 or 3 months, a lot of the wavy stuff can come back. They call it paper memory. So if you're getting 9 2s and it took a long time to grade it, that might be what's happened. Don't get mad at your presser. You need to know about paper memory. Another reason to use CCS, they press it right before it goes into grading. And so their pressing is going to be recent. If you press it at a third party, then it might sit however many weeks. And depending on how bad that curl was, it might pop back in sooner. Remember, CGC is in Florida. Remember, it's humid in Florida. Do they have climate-controlled places? Yes, but there's UPS, shipping, USPS. They're sitting in the receiving dock, which is a big old gate door probably. It's probably 100 degrees and 99% humidity. I've been to Florida. It's miserable sometimes a year. So depending on how you pack it, if any of that temperature or humidity can get in there, it might affect it. These are just things that might happen, right? So unfortunately, don't bother your dealer. And at some point there's an error. That's why I say at some point, like 9 months, you can go back to your dealer and say, it's been 9 months. Can you send them an email and copy me in? That way they call them. If you say, can you call them? Then you're taking their word for it, and maybe they just don't want to call because 15 clients asking them to call every day is a pain. But if you could just say, hey, could you shoot them an email and then follow up with me? Sometimes I sent them the email, copied in my presser, and so when they responded him and me. And so if they needed some clarification, so that's something you could do is contact them, give them the tracking number. Make sure you get the numbers when you submit it through your dealership. So if you had to follow up, you could email, and then you can copy in your comic book dealer. He wants to do this as a favor to you. If there's any problems with delays, any problems with cracked labels, this is just a pain for him and extra work. So again, don't use a dealer. Unless he wants you to because he's getting discounts for pressing lots of books or something like that, or maybe he's a certified dealer, so he has to do a certain amount of business to get some kind of discount. So those are all different situations, but it's going to take longer than you expect. And yeah, at some point, you got to call in. Anyways, hope this helps, guys. Take care.